Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at My Life with the Spirits, The Adventures of a Modern Magician by Lon Milo Duquette.
It's really a fascinating book, a blend of personal stories and his experiences with magic and spirituality.
Yeah, and he's got a great sense of humor about it all, too, even when things get a little strange.
Right. He definitely doesn't shy away from the more unusual parts of his journey. So, our goal today is to take you through Duquette's spiritual path. We'll start with his early life and those kind of mystical experiences he had, and then we'll dig into his exploration of all these different magical practices and organizations.
Sounds good. Let's start with his childhood then. It sounds like it was pretty unusual.
Well, yeah, just imagine this. For the first 2 years of his life, Duquette was bedridden.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and he talks about feeling like an adult trapped in an infant's body. Like he had this really active inner world from a very young age.
I can only imagine what that must have been like. So, did that experience shape his later interest in spirituality?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely interesting to think about, this idea of an inner world being so prominent so early on.
Right. It's like the foundation was already there.
Exactly. And then you've got these other early experiences. He talks about like learning a bedtime prayer from his mother.
Okay.
But instead of calming him down, it actually terrified him. He became convinced that Jesus was going to take his soul.
Oh, wow. That's a bit creepy for bedtime prayer.
Yeah, not exactly the most peaceful way to fall
No
asleep.
kidding.
Yeah,
So this fear, this early exposure to spirituality, even if it was negative, do you think that influenced his later exploration of these concepts?
it's possible. I mean, it's like a seed was planted,
Yeah.
even if it wasn't nurtured in the most conventional way. It definitely made him start thinking about these things from a young age.
That's true. He also mentions these recurring dreams and visions he had as a kid. Can you tell me more about those?
Yeah, there's this one dream that really stands out. He kept having this dream where he was crouching in a trench with explosions all around him. Years later, he visits this casino in Ensenada, Mexico,
Yeah.
and he realizes that the casino is the exact place from his dream.
No way. That's wild. Like some kind of premonition or something.
Right. It makes you wonder about, the nature of memory, premonitions, all of that.
It definitely adds another layer to his already unusual childhood.
Exactly.
Right.
And then there's this other aspect of his early life that we haven't touched on yet, his love of music.
Oh, right. He was a singer, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. When his family moved from California to Nebraska, his singing talent really emerged. It became his survival skill, as he puts it.
Interesting. How so?
Well, he was navigating this new environment, new people, and his singing helped him find his place. He excelled in both school and church choirs.
So music was his outlet, his way of connecting with others.
Exactly. And it's also important to note that this was a time of spiritual questioning for him. He talks about his first communion being his first adult act of conscience.
What do you mean?
She chose not to participate. He was already starting to question the religious doctrine he had been taught.
That's pretty bold for a young person. It shows a real sense of self-awareness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's this incredible story about the Beatles song, All You Need Is Love.
Okay.
He had this really profound mystical experience while listening to it.
Really? Just from a song?
Yeah, it was a moment of complete surrender for him,
Yeah.
like this opening up to a new understanding of his own spirituality.
Wow. That's amazing how something as simple as a pop song can have such a profound impact.
It really is. And it speaks to Duquette's ability to find the mystical in the everyday.
It's like he was already seeking something more, something deeper, even in his youth.
Absolutely. And these early experiences, they really laid the groundwork for his later exploration of more, shall we say, esoteric practices.
Yeah, this is where things start to get interesting. He starts experimenting with psychedelics, which was pretty common back then, and exploring different spiritual traditions.
Right. And it's important to remember the historical context here. The Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, it was a time of a lot of social and political upheaval. Many people, including Duquette, were looking for meaning, a way to make sense of it all.
So his personal journey was intertwined with these larger events.
Exactly. And it's around this time that his brother, Mark, introduces him to the Rosicrucian Order AMRC.
Hold on a sec. For those of us who aren't familiar with AMOR RC, can you give us a little background?
Sure, AMRC stands for the Ancient Mystical Order Rosicrucis. It's a worldwide organization that focuses on mystical teachings and personal development.
Okay, so what did Duquette's involvement with them look like?
He delved into their teachings, which covered a range of topics: metaphysics, mysticism. It's clear that this experience had a big impact on his spiritual understanding.
It sounds like each step of his journey, each organization he encounters, adds another layer to his understanding.
Precisely. And his journey doesn't stop there. He also spends time in communes in Oregon, immersing himself in communal living and alternative spiritual practices.
The communes were a big part of the counterculture movement. What was his experience like?
He tells this great story about a guy named Gary Dubois, who was known as the Wizard of Tequilma Road. Dubois was a pranic healer, which means he used energy to heal people.
Pranic healing, I've heard of that. So what was so special about this guy?
Well, Duquette claims that he witnessed Dubois performing healings and even resurrecting a dead kitten.
Wait, resurrecting a dead kitten.
Yep. It's a pretty wild story, and it really shows how Duquette was drawn to these unconventional individuals and practices.
He was definitely looking for something outside of the ordinary.
Absolutely. And this openness to the unconventional, it's a recurring theme in his life. It ultimately leads him to explore magic even more deeply, especially after a life-changing event, a visitation from his deceased father's ghost.
Wow, that's intense. Did he actually see his father's ghost?
According to Duquette, yes.
Yeah.
He claims this visitation was prophetic, leading him to commit to the Ordo Templi Orientis, or the OTO for short, and also to the writings of Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley, the occultist.
The one and only Crowley was a major figure in Western esotericism and the OTO, a magical order that draws from various traditions like Kabbalah, yoga, and even Freemasonry.
So Duquette's spiritual journey takes a turn towards magic.
You could say that this is where he starts experimenting with rituals, making his own magic wand, even exploring the world of evocation, which is the practice of calling forth spirits.
So we've got childhood visions, a love of music, a rebellious streak, a deep dive into mystical organizations, a pranic healing wizard, a ghost visitation, and now magic wands and spirits. What's next?
Well, from here, Duquette's exploration of magic really kicks into high gear. He starts experimenting with different rituals, encountering different entities, and, well, he continues to find humor, even in the most unexpected situations.
It sounds like we're just getting started. I can't wait to hear more about his magical adventures.
We'll dive into those in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
So last time we left off with Duquette kind of jumping headfirst into this world of magic after that whole ghost visitation thing.
Yeah, and he doesn't waste any time getting into some serious magical practice. One of the first things he tries is evocation, specifically evoking a spirit called Orobes.
Okay, now evocation, it's basically summoning spirits, right? Like calling them forth.
Exactly. It's pretty intense stuff. You know, it's not just about saying a name. There's a whole ritual involved, specific tools, incantations, sometimes even creating a protective circle.
Sounds complicated. So how did Duquette approach this evocation of Orbes?
Well, he's very meticulous about the preparations. You know, he sets up his temple space, gathers all the necessary tools, and even tries to make this special oil called the oil of Abramilin, which is traditionally used in ceremonial magic.
He's really taking this seriously. But knowing Duquette, I'm guessing something goes hilariously wrong.
You always know how to predict his misadventures. So he's got this oil of Abramilin, which is mostly cinnamon oil.
Cinnamon oil.
Yeah. And he accidentally rubs it in his eyes.
Oh my God. That sounds excruciating.
It was. He's like stumbling around in pain trying to get to the bathroom. But then something really weird happens. He has this moment of clairvoyance where he sees himself and the whole room from above. And there, in the triangle he'd set up for the evocation, he sees Orobes.
No way. So he accidentally gave himself a psychic vision?
Pretty much. It's like the pain triggered something.
Oh.
And there's Orobes just hanging out in the triangle looking bored.
Like, dude, are you done yet? I've been waiting.
Exactly. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Once Duquette recovers from the whole cinnamon oil incident, they actually manage to communicate.
So what was Orobes like? I mean, what did he look like?
Well, Duquette says Orobes looked exactly how he's described in the old grimoires, a small black horse with his giant head and these big round eyes.
A tiny horse.
Yeah, but he looked kind of bored, you know? Like he was waiting for Duquette to get his act together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what did Duquette do with Orobes? I mean, what do you ask a spirit like that?
Well, he asked him for true answers about, you know, divinity, the creation of the world, stuff like that. And Duquette says Orobes was actually pretty helpful. He even protected Duquette from other spirits that were trying to tempt him.
So it sounds like it was a successful evocation despite the whole eye burning thing.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
But of course, it wouldn't be a Duquette story without another twist.
Okay, what happened?
So remember, the sigil of Orobes. It's basically like a magical symbol used to represent and call upon the spirit.
Right.
Duquette had it tucked away in his guitar case for safekeeping. But he forgets about it. and lends his guitar to a friend.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this.
Well, yeah, the friend finds the sigil and thinks it's some kind of weird charm. He even comments on the lingering cinnamon smell, which is pretty funny.
Oh, no. So he accidentally unleashed Orobus on his friend.
Not exactly unleashed, but maybe influenced him a bit, because later Duquette finds out that his friend has become obsessed with horse racing.
And Orobus is associated with influencing gambling.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like this perfect blend of the mundane and the magical with some unintended consequences thrown in.
Classic Duquette. So what else does he get up to?
Well, his adventures continue. He gets involved in an exorcism with none other than Israel Regardie.
Wait a minute, Israel Regardie, the guy who wrote all those books about the Golden Dawn.
Yep, the one and only. So this woman named Sharon contacts Regardie because she believes she's being tormented by a spirit.
A spirit?
Yeah, it's called Garkon. Apparently, she created this dragon-like entity as a child to cope with abuse, but now it's become malevolent.
That's terrifying. So Duquette and Regardie team up to perform an exorcism on her.
It wasn't just them. They were joined by a rabbi, a Kabbalistic scholar, and even a psychiatrist. It was a whole team effort.
Wow, a real multidisciplinary exorcism team. So what happened?
Well, it's pretty intense stuff. They set up a whole ritual space, use all these traditional magical tools, and Sharon reacts violently like the spirit is resisting.
So they were actually battling this entity?
It seems that way. And according to the psychiatrist, the exorcism worked. Sharon was free from Garkon's influence. But there's a twist.
Of course there is. What happened?
Well, Sharon's kids, especially the two oldest, start acting out in really destructive ways. One of them even takes his own life, and his sister believes she's being haunted by his ghost.
Oh, wow. That's awful. It sounds like maybe the exorcism had some unforeseen consequences.
It's definitely possible. It brings up all these questions about the ethics of magic and the potential for unintended consequences.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even when dealing with the supernatural, there are real human lives at stake.
Exactly. And Duquette's journey doesn't stop there. He continues to explore different forms of magic, including Enochian magic.
Enochian magic, what's that?
It's a system of magic based on the visions of this 16th century magician named John Dee. It involves angelic language, symbols, rituals, all sorts of stuff.
So it's like communicating with angels.
In a way, Duquette and his group, the Guild of Enochian Studies, they used a technique called scrying to contact these Enochian entities.
Scrying, that's like gazing into a crystal ball or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're looking for visions, messages, that kind of thing.
So what kind of entities did they encounter?
Well, one of the first spirits they contact is this entity called ACMBICU. He's like the Mercury Senior of the elemental tablet of Earth. It's kind of complicated.
Okay, you're losing me a little. Break it down for me.
Think of the Enochian system like a giant magical map with different tablets representing different elements ruled by different entities.
So ACMBICU is one of these rulers.
Right. He's a high-ranking spirit associated with Earth and Mercury.
That sounds pretty powerful. So what kind of wisdom did he impart?
Well, that's the strange part. He doesn't really give them any straightforward answers. He's described as doing this repetitive action, like picking up and rearranging white rocks. But he doesn't answer their questions.
So they contact this powerful angel, and he's basically just playing with rocks.
Pretty much. It's one of those things that makes you question everything, but they don't give up.
Yeah.
They eventually contact another entity called EHNB. He's the ruler of the Tablet of Union, which is like the key to the whole Enochian system.
EHNB sounds like a secret code.
It kind of is. He's a powerful spirit representing the element of spirit, which connects all the other elements.
So it's all about unity and interconnectedness.
Exactly. And EHNB does offer them some interesting insights. Duquette even has a vision of what he believes is a past life. He sees himself as a young man falling from a rooftop in the Near East.
Wow, so his past life research is tying in with his magical experiences.
It's all starting to weave together.
Yeah.
But Duquette's exploration of magic isn't always successful. He learns some tough lessons, especially when he tries to collaborate with others.
Oh no, what happened?
He teams up with a friend to evoke another spirit this time for financial gain. But their intentions aren't pure and things backfire pretty badly.
So magic isn't a get-rich-quick scheme?
Not exactly. Duquette seems to be saying that magic is powerful, but it needs to be approached with respect and a clear understanding of the potential consequences.
It's like the old saying, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly. And Duquette's experiences really highlight that. There's so much more to magic than just waving a wand and getting what you want.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. Evocations, exorcisms, Enochian magic. What else is there?
In the final part, We'll delve into Duquette's reflections on death, the afterlife, and his own evolving views on traditional religious beliefs. It's a really interesting shift in perspective.
Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing about that. So we've talked about Duquette's childhood, his magical experiments, even an exorcism. But now I'm curious about his thoughts on some of the bigger questions, like what happens after we die?
Well, he definitely doesn't shy away from those big questions.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the book, he shares a really touching story about his Aunt Gladys.
And Gladys.
Yeah. She had this illness that confined her to a wheelchair, but she was still so full of life.
It's always inspiring to see people facing challenges with such grace.
Exactly. And Duquette talks about taking her to the Huntington Botanical Gardens in California. It was this beautiful experience for both of them.
I can picture it. Those gardens are incredible.
They are. But there's a bit of a dark side to this story, too. The night Gladys died, Duquette had this really strange dream.
What kind of dream?
He sees Gladys standing in the doorway, and she's totally mobile, which is remarkable considering her condition. She walks toward him and then suffocates him with a pillow.
Wow, that's a creepy dream. It's almost like a premonition.
It definitely makes you wonder. And to make things even stranger, later on Duquette receives a gift from Gladys's daughter. It's a beautiful silk pillow that Gladys had embroidered for him.
No way. That's a little too coincidental, don't you think? It's like something out of a ghost story.
It definitely blurs the lines between the physical and the spiritual. And it leads into Duquette's reflections on death and the afterlife, which is where things get really interesting. Because he's pretty skeptical of traditional religious beliefs.
You mean like heaven and hell?
Exactly.
Right.
He just doesn't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about how he can't believe in a God of judgment who condemns people for not following a specific religion.
That's a pretty bold statement, especially for someone who's so into magic and the occult.
It is. But
Right.
Duquette seems to be saying that it's our actions and our beliefs in this life that matter most, not what some dogma tells us.
So if he doesn't believe in the traditional afterlife, what does he believe happens after we die?
Well, he uses this analogy from an old Rosemary Clooney song, this Oli house.
Okay.
The song talks about not needing the house anymore. Duquette sees it as a metaphor for the soul leaving the body at death.
Interesting. So the body is like a temporary home for the soul.
Right, and when we die, the soul moves on. He doesn't get into specifics about what that means, but he seems to suggest that it's our experiences and beliefs that shape what happens next.
It's almost like we create our own afterlife based on how we live our lives here.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
And it ties into those visions Duquette had, remember? The one where he saw himself falling from a rooftop.
Yeah, he saw that vision during a past life regression and then again while scrying with that Enochian entity, EHNB.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if those visions were symbolic of the death experience itself, rather than literal past lives.
It's like all these pieces of his journey are fitting together.
They are. And it's a journey that encourages us to question our own beliefs about life, death, and everything in between. Duquette shows us that it's okay to be skeptical, to explore different paths, and even to find humor in the unexpected.
He's definitely not your typical spiritual seeker.
Not at all. But that's what makes his story so compelling. He reminds us that spirituality is a personal journey. It's not about following someone else's rules or dogma. It's about finding your own truth.
And sometimes that truth might be found in the most unlikely places, like a cinnamon oil mishap or a dream about a suffocating pillow.
Exactly. Duquette's story is a reminder that life is full of surprises, and that sometimes the most profound insights come from the most unexpected experiences.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Lon Milo Duquette's My Life with the Spirits. What a journey it's been. From childhood visions to magical experiments to reflections on death and the great beyond, Duquette has shared his experiences with wit, honesty, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
He's challenged us to think differently about spirituality and to question our assumptions about what it means to live a meaningful life.
He's also shown us that the search for truth doesn't have to be serious all the time. There's room for laughter, for curiosity, and for a sense of wonder.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we invite you to continue exploring these themes in your own life. Read Duquette's book, delve into other spiritual traditions, or simply take some time to reflect on your own beliefs and experiences. The journey is yours to create.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Lon Milo Duquette. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep the magic alive.